What's up, guys? Matt McQueenie here, Mixed Minus Podcast. I want to jump right into this episode. This is with Alecko Eskandarian, soccer phenom. Alecko went to high school with me, or I went to high school with him, Bergen Catholic, class of 2000. In this episode, we talk all about his career to date, which includes a father who played with the New York Cosmos. We got some tie-ins with Argo because Alecko's father and mother had to come over to America to play with the Cosmos around the time of the crisis in Iran of 1979. So crazy tie-ins going back there. We talk about Alecko's growing up in that atmosphere, his pro career. Alecko basically won the Heisman of college soccer, and then he was the number one draft pick with the DC United. Won a championship there, and then he kind of bounced around the league to different places, which kind of gave him an itinerant lifestyle, but he jumps right into whatever kind of location he's in and makes the complete best of it. He ultimately ended up in Los Angeles, which he really loved, and played with David Beckham and Landon Donovan, and so we talk a lot about Beckham. At our high school, Alecko Eskandarian was almost our David Beckham. I think in most schools you don't really watch the soccer. Most of the kids who are in the soccer, it's their parents and a couple of really into it kids who go to watch it. But here we had a star on our hands. We had a top player, and so we would all go to those soccer games and watch it because he kind of brought us to it. He was our David Beckham. He made such a big deal. He was kind of a star, cool thing to watch, and this is at a time where we had an unbelievable football team, American football team. So I really appreciate Alecko coming on. You're going to really enjoy it. Great discussion across the board. You'll learn a lot. You'll learn more than you thought you'd learn about Salt Lake City, which is neat. So without further ado, Alecko Eskandarian. We got Alecko Eskandarian here, my old high school classmate, class of 2000. Gone on to do bigger and better things. But Alecko, you're back in New York. How did you end up back here?
Man, it was a long road, but I took a job as the assistant coach for the New York Cosmos, the professional soccer team here. And found myself back after, I think, 13 years of being away. And
you're actually living in New York City, right?
Yes, in West Village.
Is that something you always wanted to do?
Yeah, it's funny because, we grew up right outside the city and obviously came out here a bunch growing up, whether, for shows or shopping or whatever, doing even going out, but never had the chance to live here. So when I moved back, that was definitely something that I wanted to do, just experience life in the city, and it's been amazing so far.
Yeah, because a lot of the Cosmos probably live out in Long Island, right? So you probably had to think about that, but then it's like, nah, man, I'm going to try living in New York City, I think.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I definitely pay the price with the commute every day. The train takes a little over an hour, but at the end of the day, it's worth it. Whenever I come back home, I'm going to be able to go to the great restaurants and just experience life here on the streets. It makes it worth it. So small price to pay to live where I'm at.
Did you always live in New Jersey growing up?
Yes, always in New Jersey, always in Bergen County. Born and raised, 17 years.
And how did your dad played on the Cosmos, right?
Yeah, it's funny how things come full circle. But yeah, that's how my parents actually moved to this country. Is after the 1978 World Cup, my dad came to Giant Stadium to play for the World All-Star team against the Cosmos, and after the match, the Cosmos offered him a contract, and the rest was history. He accepted it and moved my family over to Jersey, and that's where we grew up, and that's where my parents live to this day.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. I didn't realize that it was actually a contract that brought him over. So what was it like? I mean, he came before you were born a little bit, right?
Yeah, my dad came, I think, end of 78. So both my brother and I were born here in the States.
What was it like when they tell you moving from, it was Armenia they came from, right?
No, it's a long, complicated story. I mean, we're Armenian. We're Armenian and Christians, but my parents are both Christian Armenians who grew up in Iran,
Wow.
which is obviously a mostly Muslim country. So yeah, there's a whole lot of backstory to it and all that stuff. But yeah, my dad played in the World Cup for Iran and grew to stardom there in that country. And obviously the way the opportunity laid itself out was then to come to the U.S., which is pretty crazy because I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Argo.
Yeah.
But in that, I watched that movie with my parents, and my parents were like, "Oh no way! This happened a week after we moved to the U.S." And I'm like, "What?" So it's a pretty crazy story. My mom was actually in that American embassy in Tehran a week before, finalizing her visa and all that stuff to come to the States. So literally a week later, and my mom and dad probably would have been kept apart for life.
Oh my God!
Which means I wouldn't have been born.
And what a stroke of luck in many ways that on the world stage he's seen, and then you come to the cosmos, and really doing that probably it changed the trajectory of the next 30 years.
Absolutely. No, my dad's definitely, lived through a lot of changes and has dealt with a lot of, almost misidentified hatred as well, being known as an Iranian national team player without most people knowing that, we're Christian Armenians. And during that time of the revolution and all that stuff, there was definitely, a lot of mixed emotions for my dad going through everything he went through. But everything happens for a reason, and if nothing else, it's been fun to educate.
No, yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting thing you bring up because really, I mean, from everything I've read, and Argo did a good job, Iran was like a totally different place pretty much from that week you were talking about, and before it was very modernized, and they probably had a whole different life in many ways than even people who were, like you said, if you were born there, or people who, started their lives or even were parallel to their lives. They probably went in a whole nother direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, my parents have never been back. I've never been to Iran. But I still have family that lives out there. So, my family keeps in close contact with everyone there. And, some of the changes have been staggering, but the one thing that remains is my family and my parents always talk about how there's a great group of people in Iran. The people there, the core, are great people, and it's unfortunate that politics kind of ruins everything.
Well, and who knows how much you can trust, but at least politically, it seems like there might be some thawing out happening. So maybe at some point you can get back there.
Yeah, it would be interesting for sure.
So when they came to New Jersey, it's so interesting because, you and I pretty much, I think we're about the same age. So we grew up in New Jersey with probably almost the same kind of experience. We know no different, but what was it like for them before we get to you? Cause I'm very, very interested in this, but what was it like for them kind of moving to New Jersey in the US from that? Like, did it take them a while to get used to it? I'm sure your dad was okay because a lot of times when foreign players have sports, that kind of insulates them kind of from the outside experiences. You get lost in that locker room. I mean, your mom probably has the stories with that. But what was it kind of like for them getting used to life over here?
I think, to be honest, my mom adapted quicker than my dad. But, my parents are both great people, pretty easygoing. Very easy to get along with, so I don't think it was a problem for them to, make friends right off the bat. But we're also very proud of our heritage and our culture as well. So even throughout my childhood and growing up, we speak Armenian at home, and we upkeep a lot of the ideals and culture that most Armenian families grow up with. So even though I'm sure there was, a period where they might have struggled with adapting and all that stuff, I don't think they had any issues with, upkeeping our values and cultures and and then just integrating it with the American culture as well.
Yeah,
even for me, I mean, I went to an Armenian school. I didn't go to a regular American school growing up. Armenian was my first language because my parents didn't speak English well at all, when I was a kid. We definitely grew up as an Armenian family, but obviously here in the United States.
And there's obviously a story that could go on for 7 podcasts with that, but I mean, it is it's an amazingly tight-knit community. So as long as there's pockets of it, you're very much insulated, I think, with a good group of people.
Yeah. My parents got a lot of help too. Armenians are very good giving people. So I think as soon as people caught wind that my dad was in the area, a lot of families reached out, whether it be people you meet at church or whatever it was. So they got a lot of help as well, to get to where they are now.
Now the Cosmos are almost like a mythological team when soccer was like the thing on Broadway almost, or football, but we'll call it soccer here. Were you at all cognizant when he was still playing, or had he stopped playing by that time?
It took me a while. I mean, my earliest memories as a child are being at Cosmos games, being in the locker room, juggling the ball with Carlos Alberto and Giorgio Chinaglia and all these guys. And for me, those guys are my friends. It didn't hit me until I was maybe 10 years old, where I was like, oh man, these guys were kind of a big deal. Like, they were world superstars. And growing up in my dad's soccer shop, there wasn't a day that went by that people wouldn't come over and talk Cosmos and tell stories about all the games and all that stuff. But for me, it was like, oh yeah, they're talking about my friends and that soccer team that my dad played on, and it's not a big deal at all. But as I started getting older, then I really started to understand what a huge deal it was, and how the Cosmos basically introduced high level soccer to the United States, and they were like the Rolling Stones of their era.
Yeah, and Pele, right?
Yeah, Pele, Franz Beckenbauer, Carlos Alberto. I mean, so many international stars that played on that team, and they were filling up Giant Stadium on the regular. Upwards of 70,000 people coming to matches to watch.
That's absolutely amazing. And you're probably sitting here with the Cosmos now. You're on, you're in Hofstra on Long Island, but the hope is probably to try to find that again, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the big thing is just keeping the team name alive and allowing the next generation of soccer players to grow up with the Cosmos and play a good brand of soccer that people can be proud of and enjoy watching.
Now, do we want to get to where basically this whole Portland-Seattle thing is? These are like the craziest fans I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think our entire nation is capable of doing that all over. We have some extremely passionate soccer fans, especially here in New York. I mean, you could see now at the World Cup. So, yeah, I think that's absolutely the goal for any market in soccer.
Did you ever get the chance to play up there?
No, in Seattle I did. In Portland I did not. They joined the league after I had to retire.
After you had to retire. Now, when you're walking around with this World Cup stuff, as somebody who's so deep into soccer, do you get upset because they're so intense now and they're not as intense all the time? Or is it almost like one of those things where the Super Bowl everybody watches too, and there's not as many people, even though there are a lot of crazy football fans, American football, but the Super Bowl is like a whole nother level. Is it sort of like that with the World Cup versus everyday soccer? Yeah,
it's funny because during the game yesterday, I was in a packed bar. Everyone's singing, chanting, yelling. It was great. And I'm sitting there being like, man, this is awesome. Like I'm glad I can see this in my lifetime. But then you just hear so many ignorant fans.
Yeah.
Which was like, I was like, oh my gosh, shut up, man. Because, someone would be like, I don't know, how does that guy, miss that pass or this and that, I was like, oh man, these guys, you can tell they don't know the game. But then again, it's like that in every sport because, if I'm watching, a football game and there's a flag or something, I'm sure I yell out some ignorant stuff as well. But at the end of the day, it's, beggars can't be choosers. So the more people that are into it and are watching and are growing with the sport, it's a great thing for soccer in this country. And yeah, man, it doesn't make me angry at all. I'm happy that so many people are into it and just hope that it sticks. And there's going to be a lot of people who are just into it for the next month. And after the World Cup's over, they'll go back to, bashing soccer or not really following it. But even if, 5% of those people are like, you know what, I kind of enjoyed that and I want to go watch games. That's still a big number of people that are gonna hop on the bandwagon and hopefully become, soccer nuts in the future.
Yeah, it's almost like you're not going to get all 100% of the people who jump in maybe because it's trending and it's something to talk about at the water cooler if that still exists as much. But you hope maybe that out of that 100% who are so intense, that out of this experience, and as far as the U.S. can go, I think will help the Americans' case to stay in it. But out of that experience, you kind of hope 10, 15% are left to really find some identification, whether it's English Premier League or American MLS soccer. I think that's probably the hope.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the ripple effect every World Cup cycle. Every time the World Cup comes around, more and more people are getting into it. And, American soccer, MLS, NASL, USL, whatever you look at, they reap the benefits of it, especially in some of these small market clubs where there's not much else besides a soccer team. More and more people are like, you know what, I enjoy this, I like this, I want my kids to play, I want a team to support, and that passion is there, so it's a beautiful thing.
Now, I saw in the last couple of days, I think I saw it in the New York Times, that the women's soccer players from the 1999 team who was so famous, and if there were memes then, it would have been crazy with the shirts coming off, and there already were people doing it. You used to do it, I think, right? But there was a lot brought up from them about concussions and things like that. And you're obviously, right, unfortunately, a poster boy kind of for that. What do you think about, I mean, you probably saw that. What do you think about the concussion stuff? And I mean, with you, was it sort of was it a happenstance? Was there something that happened over time? Was it really just, kind of a terrible luck thing?
It's a tough one to talk about, man. For me, it's, first of all, I'm great. I'm really glad that everyone's, working hard to bring about awareness about concussions in this country because obviously it's become a huge problem, even in other sports like the NFL and even some of the sports as well. And yeah, it changes lives, and in some cases it's ended lives. So it's been a fatal epidemic. With that said, it's very, very frustrating for me to talk about. Sure. Because obviously I'm, living it right now, and I have no idea what the future will hold in terms of my symptoms and if I get better or worse. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns that are involved with it, but more so than that, there's no way to prevent it, and there's no way to really stop it from happening. So, although I appreciate everyone's efforts in talking about it and doing all these different things, I've yet to see something real and concrete that's going to make a difference. So that part's frustrating for me because I hope everyone's working towards that, but sometimes I think you find people who are doing it for their own personal gain or media attention or just to get their name out in the media. And for me, I don't like that. So I've tried to keep a healthy distance from it, until I find something worthwhile that I'd love to share with the world. But until then, I don't like people using, maybe their own unfortunate circumstances to benefit themselves, whether it's, monetary with, giving talks about it and all that stuff, or even just get their name out in the media. And I'm not implying that's what the women's World Cup players are doing, because I know, Brandon Chastain very well, and and Cindy Paulo, I spoke to her a lot when I went through my concussions as well. So I know they have good intentions and a good heart. I just, I'm tired of talking about it. I just wish there was something we could do to prevent, anyone from having to go through everything I've gone through, and a host of other athletes as well.
Yeah, it's almost like just the right level of talking about it. And I think especially for American football, what seems like doing some things that, even 20 years ago, we didn't know, when people would say, oh, he got his bell rung, get back out there, right, kid. And then especially with kids doing it because they're growing up and things aren't even formed and it can really do funky things. But yeah, I was just very interested with that because soccer sort of is, it's like, there's not as much low hanging fruit, it seems like, as there is in football to kind of work around that. It's a tough thing. And yeah, and I understand you're not wanting to push on it because it really is such a personal thing. And I just, I can't imagine as young as we are having something like that happen. And then you kind of don't, when you're younger, even in our 20s, 30s, still 40s, even when we get there, it's like, deep down, we sort of think we're very invincible. And then when things like that happen, you're like, oh man, I just can't control it. I mean, I remember when I was at the Nets and Jason Kidd would get these migraines, and they're not the same thing by any stretch, but they're kind of things that overtake you that you're used to by force of will pushing through, and you just can't. And you kind of have to like let life happen and kind of do the right things to keep it kind of in line. But yeah, it's a amazingly tough thing. And I know from afar, I felt very bad for the fact, like, sort of in your prime, that you couldn't keep playing at the levels you did.
Yeah, listen, it's been very tough. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I definitely had a lot of tough times, but at the end of the day, I'm very, very blessed to have the life I've had, the career that I've had, and yeah, there's watching the World Cup even is tough because you're like, man, I know I could have been on even this current World Cup team,
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of unfulfilled dreams because of it. But at the same time, when you really take a step back, there's so many people that are dealing with much worse things than I am. So the last thing I'm going to do is feel sorry for myself. And that's, been also the tough part about talking about it is I feel like you end up painting yourself out to be a victim, and you start thinking about all the things you can't do and things you've missed out on and all that. And for me, that's just not, healthy for me. I don't want to sit there and think about how my life has changed and, the things that I could have been doing that I'm not doing now because of this. And for me, it's, wasting energy on things that I can't control. So, for me, I'd rather feel blessed about the opportunities that I have and the life that I've had, and focus on the things that I can do rather than the ones that I can't.
Gotcha. Now, this U.S. team, you brought it up there, probably a lot of guys you played with, against, different levels. How good are they kind of in comparison to the world right now? I mean, obviously they're making it to the next round. They seem to be holding their own. They have the, Klinsmann, the coach there. How good are they?
Well, the game has changed a lot, where tactics are so much more important now than they were, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, where if you put together a solid game plan and you have 11 guys, 22 guys, whatever the roster is, that buys into it, you could beat anybody. And, I think back in the day, it was kind of like everyone played the same way. Everyone, stepped on the field wanting to win, playing, the right way or whatever style it is that they played. But the game has changed a lot, where teams are a lot smarter and they have way more resources in studying their opponents and their tendencies and all that stuff, where you could put together a game plan to neutralize whatever it is that the other team is doing. And, I think seeing that at work is a beautiful thing, because obviously me being a coach now and kind of a tactician, you're always looking at different ways to play to offset your opponent's strengths. But that kind of goes in line with the U.S. team, where we've always been a team that works hard, is unified, sticks together. But when we played teams straight up, we just couldn't compete because some of these guys had super talented special players that were better than our guys, to a man. But now that you throw tactics into it, and you throw our, commitment level, our athleticism, and now in turn we're developing much more talented players, guys who are playing in the top leagues in the world, and now all of a sudden it's a much more even playing field, where even if to a man we're not as talented as the next team, and they have, way bigger superstars and all that stuff, it doesn't matter. As long as you execute your game plan, you could beat anybody. So I think that's what we're seeing with this U.S. team, and it's been great to see all the guys buy into Klinsmann's tactics and what he's been trying to do. Because even if it's one or two guys that don't buy into it, then we'd get crushed. And that goes for any team, to be honest with you. I mean, you look at that Portugal team; they have so many talented players, but you see they have guys on different pages. Ronaldo's kind of doing his own thing. Nani's doing his own thing, and next thing you know, they're down a couple goals. It's not, an individual sport where you can afford a couple guys doing their own thing. Especially in the World Cup at this level, every guy has to be committed to the plan. And that's been the beautiful thing about the U.S. and sky's the limit. They could pull off a couple more upsets, and who knows, maybe find themselves in the semifinals.
Well, what's funny is I've been listening. I like Grantland, and I like, Bill Simmons and his podcasts and stuff. And he's got an interesting eye for sports and funny takes. And he obviously did a World Cup kind of episode, brought in some friends or people who know soccer more than he does, which is many people. And they were kind of saying that Ronaldo was waiting it a little, Dwayne Wade, like where he was sort of half speeding a little bit. And what you brought up there was about kind of the team, in basketball, they say five fingers and a fist. It's all connected, and it really can go a long way. We even see it in basketball this year, where you have the Heat, who are just this conglomeration of in their prime, great pieces, and in many ways they were as strong as their weakest links, which really hurt them. And then they're playing a team. Now, granted, Tim Duncan's an all-time player. Tony Parker and Ginobili are Ginobili's sort of like a soccer player, but they're kind of, they're Hall of Famers. So they are great, but they have a team. And we saw it with, even Detroit, the Pistons in the mid 2000s when they beat the Lakers, when they had all these great players. It's like that can still win out, even in a time where personalities and, marketing campaigns can say someone is bigger than the rest. That team aspect, when it's honed the right way and all eyes are moving forward, it really can work.
Yeah, no, that's the beautiful thing about sports. Everyone always loves an underdog. They love seeing, the less talented, hardworking player team, come out on top. And there's a lot of truth behind it. Like you said, there's no substitute for hard work and commitment. And that goes for, whatever industry you're in. But especially, I think, in soccer, with, so many players involved, such a big field, it's a special thing when that many guys are on the same page. And I've, played professional soccer for a lot of years. I've been part of a lot of teams, and it's very rare that you find that. I look at my 2004 MLS Cup Championship DC United team, and I was young. I think I was 21, 22 at the time.
Yeah.
And that was a feeling that I had where I was like, I didn't even have to look behind me, and I knew where every player on my team was going to be. I knew if I did something, every guy would have my back. And it was such a great feeling. And to be honest with you, I only felt that maybe once or twice more for the next 8 years of my career. And you realize how rare that is, because there's always personality clashes or just selfishness, whatever it is, greed that seeps in, and even feeling an ounce of that where you're like, you know what? 8 of these guys are my boys, but those other 2, I'm not sure that they're, all about the team. If you have that feeling, it's not the same. But if you know that every guy is committed to it, which is, especially the Spurs, like you said, are a great example. Top to bottom, every single guy on that roster was following Popovich's plan and playing for the team, or else they were gone.
It's amazing.
But yeah, most of the time that wins out.
Well, and it's funny. I can't talk enough about the Spurs right now because now they beat my Nets in 2003, and the Nets actually took them to 6 games, which was amazing, and almost the 7th game. But this year especially, I appreciate what the Spurs did so much. It's, as you get older, you kind of see sports a different way. If you're in it too, you see it even way different. Like you said, you're in a locker room and you kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes. And I think it really changes fandom in many ways. And that's why when something like what the Spurs did, hopefully what the US team is pushing through and doing, when there's moments that like exalt you, that's what sports needs to do. We all have lives where we're kind of working through our own issues, and we don't want another issue to be the team where we're all trying to be GMs and do all this. You want sports to raise you up and exalt you. And at least you're only bad because you were just a championship team and you have to hit bottom to come back. You always want to be rising. You always want to do well. And that's what I always have a problem with being a Mets fan. But it's kind of that aspect. And I think this spring, especially after the Spurs lost in such heartbreaking fashion last year, and they come back this year and then just destroy it. And they're like, oh yeah, we have a big 3. We're going to throw Kawhi Leonard in here. Watch that. How's that? And it's just, it hit me that it's like we're seeing something in basketball that you really will never see again. It's like the Utah Jazz if they actually won championships.
Well, it's special. And it's hard, man. It's hard to put that together. Like I said, there's with the personalities that you have to manage, and when you throw money into the mix, especially with the Spurs, a lot of these guys could be making a lot more money in different places, but they bought in. It takes a special type of athlete and person to construct that with, but they're obviously able to do it.
All right, in the last couple here, we're gonna live vicariously through you a little bit. So, your professional career, my gut feeling is that you like the idea that you played in like 5 places.
Depends. Some yes, some not so much. I went through a lot of different types of circumstances.
It seems like you're a guy though who, I mean, at least what I could see through Instagram or Facebook, you like getting somewhere and just like totally getting involved. Like, you probably don't want to necessarily go to Toronto, but you go to Toronto and you figure out everything there is to Toronto, and you probably live it, and you'll probably kind of assimilate that moving forward. You go, really interesting. How was it in Utah?
Oh man. Well, that's the thing is, life is crazy sometimes, and sometimes there are things that go your way and things that don't go your way. But just like with my concussions now, rather than feeling sorry for myself and thinking about why this or that happened, I found that it's always better to focus on the positives and try to make whatever it is a good experience. I always joke out with my friends that you can put me in a cardboard box and I find a way to make it cool and have fun and entertain myself. So I've been very lucky to live in some awesome cities. And Utah, Salt Lake City was one of them, man. It was definitely very different. I didn't know anybody there at first, so there were definitely some boring nights. But once you started to immerse yourself in the culture, I met some awesome people and awesome fans, and Utah's got a lot to offer, man. It was really cool.
Not a huge Armenian population there, right?
Not much at all. And I feel like I should have tried harder. I think I gave up on it too easily, that there were no Armenians there. But it's been funny because after the fact, and I left, there was like all of a sudden all these Armenians who were like, "Oh man, it's bummer you left Utah because we." And I was like, "Wait a minute, where the hell were you guys when I lived there?" But yes, I probably gave up on that part of it too early. But still, I met some great people, and we had a fantastic team when I was there that I really enjoyed playing for. But I was only there for half a season before I moved to LA.
Gotcha. Two interesting things with Salt Lake, which you probably saw. I think the best hotel in the country, the Grand American, and that's a beauty. I mean, that's that was what I got to travel with the Nets for half a season. And that was the first place, that was the first stop on like when I got to travel. Unbelievable. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness. And two, this like thing you have to join in order to drink beer. That was really strange.
You have to be a member, man.
A member. Yeah. It was like, what? You have to be a member.
Oh,
and it was all like,
it was all
like 3.2% alcohol too.
Yeah. That tripped me out, man. The first time I went to go join some of my teammates at a bar, and you go up and try to show the bouncer your ID, and they're like, "Hey, are you a member?" And you're like, "What? What do you mean, member? Like, I'm like, what kind of club is this? You know, what's going on?" But yeah, there's a lot of funky laws there. Even with a sidecar. Do you know what a sidecar is?
A sidecar? No.
So if you order a regular drink, let's say you wanted a vodka tonic or whatever, right?
Yeah.
If you order it in Utah, it doesn't come out the way it would in New York per se, because they're only allowed to pour a certain amount of alcohol, which if you were to order a regular drink, you wouldn't even taste it. So what you're supposed to do, and this is, I never did it, obviously, just my friends.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, anytime you order a drink, you have to say whatever it is you want to drink and a sidecar. And basically that allows you have to purchase another shot on the side to pour inside of your drink to make it an actual drink.
Wow. That is something else.
Very interesting.
Yeah, no,
yeah, man, it was a lot to learn for sure, but yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Some of the greatest entrepreneurs are Mormons, because for 2 years in their life at an impressionable age, they have to go somewhere else in the world and sell something that people don't necessarily want.
Right.
It's an interesting thing. A lot of them come out of it. So yeah, you would have never had that experience if you weren't in Utah. Now, LA, I think you really loved LA.
I did. I absolutely did. Still do.
Yeah. Can't wait to go back each time, right? Do you guys have are you in the league you're in? Do you have an LA? There's no LA team, right?
No, not at the moment. I think they're looking to expand at some point, but not at the moment.
Now, did you read the Grant Wall book, The Beckham Experiment?
I never did. Grant's a friend of mine. I really, really respect him. He actually helped me get my start a little bit in Sports Illustrated. I did that for a little bit on the side.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about that book that I didn't like, the idea of it. Obviously it was great for Grant, and, one opportunity to be able to, follow the team around and follow, David around and chronicle all of that. But I think there's just some things that, should stay within a locker room and shouldn't be discussed, in a book, by a reporter. So yeah, to be honest, I never read it. And it's not Grant's fault. I give Grant all the credit in the world for gaining that access. That's amazing. That's a tribute to, how professional he is and what a good job he does. But, yeah, I never got to read it.
Well, the interesting thing with that book is that for somebody like me, I'm really into sports, but I'm not necessarily into, MLS or American soccer. I saw that book come out and I went, oh, because Beckham is he's that kind of character. He moves markets. And I have to think, what was it like for you? I mean, you were a phenomenal player in your own right, but even like David Beckham feels like he probably felt like a celebrity to you a little bit, right?
Oh, listen, he's an icon. There's no question about it. And he's a phenomenal soccer player. But just who he is as a person, I think, is what takes him to a different level. Obviously, with all his endorsements and his life and all that stuff, he's got a different level of fame. But I love that guy, man. Even in the, I didn't spend a great deal of time with him. But in the one season that I was with him, I really, really respect that guy. I don't have a single bad thing to say about him. His professionalism, how he carries himself. I mean, he's the epitome of cool. I mean,
he sure
anything
is.
that guy does ends up being cool. And he carries himself with such class and so mild-mannered. And I'm the type of guy, in a locker room, I'm always causing, not trouble, but, whether it's pranks or...
Mischievous.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of a healthy locker room, is when you have guys that feel comfortable, joking around with each other and picking on each other and all that. And literally, I tried my hardest to pick on them and get them uncomfortable or insecure or whatever, and the guy wouldn't budge, man. He would just come right back at me with pretty funny jokes, and we had a pretty good banter going along. So don't have a single bad thing to say about that guy. He's top class.
Had you ever met him before?
Prior to playing with him?
Yeah.
No, just played against him. Just competed against him prior to playing with him.
Yeah, so I mean, he rises above. Even, I mean, they call the rule after him, right? The Beckham rule, that you can kind of pay one guy a lot of money to play on a team.
Listen, and that's the thing is, everyone will point to the absurd amount of money he was making and talk about how that wasn't fair to have one guy making that much money. I think he was on like $25 million a year, and then there were guys on $30,000 a year in the same locker room, and people are saying that's not right. And in many ways, people don't understand the impact that a guy like Beckham had on our league. The amount of tickets that he sold and stadiums he filled out and gear that people bought. I mean, there's, to this day, I would say hundreds of thousands of people who don't know anything about soccer, who don't know anything about MLS, but they can tell you that David Beckham played for the LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
And that catapulted, soccer and the league to a new level. And that's what you pay for when you bring a guy like Beckham in. So, with all due respect to any of the guys that were on minimum wage at the time, no one's talking about them and buying their shirts and coming to stadiums to watch them. But a guy like Beckham, that's global. So people just have to understand the role that he played, and as a result of that, now the minimum wage is closer to $50,000. And that's Beckham's doing as well. Because the more revenue you generate, then the more the next collective bargaining agreement, you can up the ante a little bit and raise all the salaries. So everyone is making more money now because Beckham was making an absurd amount to get here. So people just need to understand the process and how it all worked.
What was it like playing with him? Were you on a line with him much?
Yeah. No, we obviously we were starters. So played together, practiced together. It was the year I got hurt, actually, so I didn't get to play too many games with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, playing with him in a short period of time was awesome, man. My best memory is just doing crossing and finishing drills with him, because he's probably arguably one of the best passers the game has ever seen. So
right?
To have him tee up crosses and finishing them was an honor, man. I mean, he literally puts it perfect in a spot for the forward every single time. So yeah, man, he was a great player. Not the type of player to wow you necessarily with his skills or anything, but a very, very smart player. And probably, like I said, the best technique in striking the ball, compared to anyone who's ever played the game.
I'm catching you off guard with this analogy, but what do you think of this one? Not from the global icon point of view, but Jason Kidd.
Love Jason Kidd. Comparing him to Beckham?
Yeah, like I'm trying to look for I'm not trying to look for someone who you would think of was like Beckham in another sport, and I think basketball probably feels the most.
It's different, because for me, Jason Kidd is so intuitive, creative. I mean, he sees the game unlike anyone else. Beckham's not like that. He just does the simple things very well. And he's not, if anything, off the top of my head, I might even compare him to a Ray Allen per se, a guy that you see his shot and you're like, wow, that's the prettiest shot in the game. And that's how Beckham was. With every time he strikes the ball, you're like, man, that guy strikes the ball better than anyone I've ever seen. It's just clean. It goes perfect on the spot. So he had just a gift. And then with that, obviously, he's smart, and his work ethic and staying fit and all that stuff. But in terms of a quick, without thinking about it, I would almost go Ray Allen, just in terms of his technique.
I like that one right off the top of the head.
Yeah, man, I'm a sports junkie, dude.
I mean, it really makes a lot of sense because Ray, you could keep rolling him out for 5 years if you want. I mean, I think he's probably done after this year with what happened there, but his shot will not go away. He's going to be Jesus Shuttlesworth in the park at 50 years old if he wants to be. I don't think he wants to be, but he's I like that one a lot. That's a good one.
Same thing like a Ken Griffey Jr. swing. There are certain things that you see in an athlete in a sport that you're like, wow, that just looks awesome.
Yeah.
And that's how it is watching Beckham take a free kick or whipping across.
Last two from your time here, and we'll have to do this again. I'm liking it if you ever have the time. But so in this book, a lot you read it, and then obviously we saw it when Beckham was here. This whole loaning thing to major teams. What do you think about that? And I actually think something somewhat positively about it, but I'm sure it hurts a team. But what was that like, when you see a player, there's very few you can really do that with, there's probably like 5 or 6 players, although they do it a lot overseas, right? They'll loan out. But what does that do?
It's a complicated question because every player is in a different circumstance. So, when you talk about loans, so Beckham, he was with the LA Galaxy. Obviously, he's making all this money. He's performing all his duties with his contract. But at the time, he was also playing for the English national team. They had a World Cup they were getting ready for, and I think globally, there are still national team coaches and just coaches around the world in general who don't respect American soccer the way they should. That even happened this year with Carlos Valdez, who's a member of the Colombian national team, who played for the Philadelphia Union, but his national team coach said, if you're playing for Philadelphia, you're not going to make the World Cup team. I need you playing at a higher level. And so he's playing in Argentina right now on loan. I don't even know if the Argentine league is how big of a step up it is. Obviously, he's playing for a very good team and he's doing well. But there's unfortunately that stigma that playing in America is a vacation for guys when they're past their prime. And so a guy like Beckham, who was wanting to be on the English national team, his coach obviously said, listen, I need you can play in LA, but I need you to get some time at a higher level club. So, David is pursued by the top clubs in the world. So he would ask to go on loan for 2-3 months he went to AC Milan. He went to, where else did he go to at one point? PSG, whatever it is, which, you have to understand it and respect it. Same thing with a guy like Clint Dempsey or even Landon Donovan. I mean, sometimes it's a bit different where these guys, want to just pursue opportunities. They're going to get a huge financial gain out of it. They're going to gain some great experiences out of it that'll help them in the long run with international games. And they're setting themselves up in the future. When Clint Dempsey, goes to Fulham, and obviously signs a contract there and does very well, now all of a sudden his market value jumps. Same with Landon. Landon went to Everton, and everyone was saying how everyone for years and years talked about Landon couldn't succeed in Europe, and he never cut it there and all that stuff. So he goes to Everton, and within a month or two, he scores 5-6 goals, and he's one of their, leaders. And now his market value, when he discusses contracts with LA, is, hey, listen, you guys have to pay me $3-4 million, because if not, Everton will pay me that money. So there's a lot that goes into it, but everyone's in a different situation.
Now, was that a surprise to you, who watches the game so much, that he was left off?
Yeah, it was, and it's not so much of a surprise in terms of his personality-wise, because I think there are some guys that don't get along with Landon, or he rubs some people the wrong way. But in terms of as a player, he absolutely deserves to be on that roster. But it was a very, very gutsy call from Klinsmann, because when you really break it down, if they lost that first game, I mean, he would have gotten crushed in the media by everyone saying, what if Landon was there? If Landon was there, we would have won. Landon this, Landon that, especially with Outdoor getting injured. And even now, he's still not out of the woods. But there's something to be said about if it was a personality issue, that you might sacrifice talent for the good of the team and for chemistry of the team. And we were talking about it earlier with the Spurs and all that stuff. And that might be what we're seeing here, because as of right now, the amount of people that were skeptical, including myself, about him not being on the team, it's dwindled. I mean, a lot. Where you barely hear chatter anymore about if Landon was on the team, because now it's like, you know what, we have a good team, and it's not just about Landon. And I think that's a big reason why Jurgen, they had personal issues, because I don't think Jurgen felt like the media or the fans really respected the process and all the other players that were part of it, because Landon has been, the savior of U.S. soccer for so long.
Yeah. Well, you think back to 2004 in the Red Sox, their best player, they got rid of him. Nomar Garciaparra, and then they went and won, because sometimes a guy can be so great, but he's actually pulling you down because he's not all in. It's like it's an interesting thing. But my final thing I wanted to ask you here, this whole loan idea, I'd love other sports to do it, or something like it to be done. Can you imagine? I had this thought with the fact that LeBron James just opted out after this, his 4-year run. They all signed these 6-year deals, and then they all had opt-outs after the 4th year. So he opts out, and look at the chatter it's creating. Look how many teams become in play. Look how many teams start moving players for the hope that they could get him to open it up. What if a guy like LeBron James, or people at that level, David Beckham back in the day, what if you just only sign 1-year contracts and you just go from team to team, and then you show your greatness because each fan base sees how you play on their team and how great you make them, and then you move to the next team, and it's like his own dynasty. It would be the ultimate kind of modern day move.
Man, it's a tough one, because as an athlete, the one thing you want is to feel comfortable and consistency. So to go from and you want to win. Yeah. So with Beckham, for instance, Beckham signed a 5-year deal with LA Galaxy. It wasn't like it was just a 1-year deal with the Galaxy. He had a 5-year deal with the Galaxy. That was his team. Yep. And then he got to do stuff on the side, obviously going to different leagues. But to play on a different team in one league year after year, I think that would probably be a mistake, because championship teams aren't built overnight. And even with David, he joined the Galaxy in 2006, 2007, 2007, I think. And the team sucked for the first 2 years. They were awful. And it wasn't until Bruce Arena took over and surrounded him with other good players. And then they built, a dynasty that then they won, I think, 2-3 championships over the next 3-4 years. So it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. So to go from one team to the next, I think you'd have a lot of frustrating years, and I think it would actually turn off a fan base, because they're not going to really worship you knowing that you're here today, gone tomorrow. Well, but I think when you take the time to build something, that I think is more of a testament to a guy's character and what kind of champion they are. And I fully acknowledge it's like the craziest idea ever. But once he left Cleveland, and then now he's in Miami, and then you saw Pat Riley, saying you got to build this, and I'm sitting there going, he doesn't have to. He's the whole reason that you're in this spot. Absolutely. He already left one place, and I was like, look at the cottage industry it's creating. Look how much chatter it's creating in the summer.
imagine if each year he's just like, I'm just going to continue to sign a 1-year contract and you got to show me because I will carry any Eastern Conference team to the final. And then, you know,
Absolutely.
if you're just like, yeah, LeBron, hey, I'm going to go to LA this year. And he's in such a stratosphere. There's only like, a couple of players who could ever do it. But I almost think he's like it could be like the Pharrell Williams of the NBA, you know, where it's like, I'm going to work together and collaborate with these artists to make their best song. And then, hey, if nobody's going to take my song, I'm just going to go make my own and it's going to be the best song there is.
See, the problem with that, though, is that it's not a smart business decision.
Yeah.
Because now if you have an off year, now your market value goes down.
Oh, you're dead.
You're missing out on a lot of money. Or if you have like an amazing year and they're like, okay, we're going to pay you $40 million a year because you're incredible. Well, guess what? There's a salary cap, so chances are you're going to be surrounded by crap, you know? So it's such a tough one, man, because, you know, building a championship team is such an art. And at the end of the day, if you're not on a team that's in contention to win, you're not happy. I don't care how much money you're making, where you live, whatever it is. But if you're getting your butt kicked day in and day out, it's not fun at all to show up to work. So, you know, I think that's, you know, first and foremost, obviously you want to, you know, make the right decision for yourself and your family and all that. But you got to be happy going to work every day. So, you know, to do the whole 1-year thing, I think either you're getting short end of the stick financially or you get taken care of financially, but now your team sucks. So it becomes a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a terrible idea. I just want it to happen because I think it would be so cool.
This is what I'm here for. I'm here to poke holes, man, and fuck discussion. That's it.
I mean, you got LeBron saying, or at least people saying, hey, they're all willing. They'll bring Carmelo in. They're all willing to take like half so they could all play together. Right. So I'm sitting there going, hey, if I'm LeBron, I'm going to say, no, screw you all. I'm the best player here. I mean, he turned Wade and Bosh. Like, these guys were major players, and I know Wade has gotten really hurt. He's not the player because he was an all-timer in his 20s, like when he could go to the hoop.
Absolutely.
But Bosh has turned into what looks like Anthony Peeler. He's like a tiny left-handed three-point shooter. This guy was supposed to be one of the best players in the league, but like it's almost as though playing with LeBron, it's been a son that just like shoots them out because he's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, listen, yeah. He doesn't know anybody anything. You know, you nailed it with that. He's free to do whatever he wants, but from a business standpoint, it might be a tough one.
Well, we've gone all over the place with this one, and we lost the feed for the first time, so I'll stitch it all back together. But Alecko, this was awesome. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Anything for you, man. It's been a while, but it's my pleasure to do this.